Hi, it's me. Just you're awesome. I'm underneath the desk to show you a representation. I'm missing the gum, of course, gum that used to be stuck right there underneath the desk. I'm showing you a representation of myself in fourth grade. So this is how we were taught to protect ourselves from the enemy. Now, I don't even know who the enemy was at the time, but I'm just going to show you what it used to look like. So fourth grade, come into class, Mrs. Ness's class. Everybody quiet down. Okay, it's time to get underneath your desk for our drill for in case they drop the atomic bomb. Here goes everybody. And so, you'd be sitting there and I'd be like, And then you have to avoid the gum, of course, that's stuck underneath the desk. And maybe look at your shoes, contemplate if your life is going to end shortly. I just remember like these moments, like sitting underneath here. And I just want to drop in with you underneath the desk today because of these enemies that people have become afraid of. And just recognizing that in these later years of my life, not too late, of course, but in these later years of my life, I realized that from the time that I was a child, I've been taught to hide away and to really contemplate all of these possible enemies. So at some point, I was recognizing, like, I remember going through this whole thing, and please let me know if you've been there. I put a little song out there to talk about tonight. I may have to come up from underneath the desk at some point because I can't quite sit up. But how often did you go through like hate the Cubans or hate the Russians, or in my lineage, okay, we'll start with hate the Cubans. My dad's best friend is a Cuban. And then was hate the Russians. I got to know a lot of Russians. I'm like, damn, these people are fun. Why do I have to hate these people? And growing up in this small town, it was, well, if you're talking to a communist, if you're talking to a socialist, if you're talking to, they might think these things of you, versus when I finally got out to California and I was meeting all kinds of people, and none of them fit into the criteria of this enemy. So I've been thinking about, this for a while now, how often just from our lineage, just from our early blueprints where we taught about the enemy. And then it got me to thinking about gum stuck underneath desks and how much fear from early childhood I personally was fed about people that I didn't even know, and that people that I couldn't even have a conversation with because I was taught that even to converse with those people made me a bad person. So I just started thinking about, I have like a rebel side of me, of course, right? So the minute that somebody tells me, well, if you talk to them, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Or if you converse with them, that makes you the enemy. And so from the time that I was little, I was like, okay, well, great. I guess I'm the enemy then. So I know that I often share this story, but there was a little Black girl that showed up, and she in my class, and I went up to her and I was like, oh my gosh, hi, it's great to meet you. I was in second grade. And I'm sitting there with her and I'm really excited and I want to play with her out on the playground. And my teacher was saying, I couldn't understand. I was sharing a book with her and I'm talking to her and I'm like, I'm not understanding the rest of the dynamics. We had moved out of Chicago, out of the Chicagoland area, into a small town further north. And I didn't understand the dynamics of the time and what was going on. So she wasn't allowed to take any books home. And I was like, well, you could use my book because I'm not going to use my book. And when I handed it to her, the teacher was like, oh no, if she makes it the week, then we'll give her a book at the end of the week. But that night where they were living got shot up and they were gone the next day. So I was always perplexed by this idea of the enemy. And I'm wondering, lineage wise, what we've taught ourselves for our nervous system. It's just a thought that came to me recently because I've recognized when I was in California, I had a lot of friends of mine that were from Mexican. And I went to this really affluent high school, one of the many high schools that I went to. And I was hearing often about the enemy being the Mexican. And I was like, do you hang out with Mexicans? Because the ones that I know are pretty awesome. And I didn't understand the conversations. And so I was always like, I don't know if you're hanging out with Mexican people, but I think that you might try hanging out with some of them to see if you get a different point of view. And then another really great family that I got to know, because it was the Iranians at the time, Iran, the folks from Iran. And I got to hang out with a lot of Iranians, Persians. And so we're hanging out, and I was like, what is the deal? Why are so many people telling me that I'm not even supposed to be talking to you? What is this about? And it led me down the path of recognizing just one, getting to know people one-to-one, especially people that I don't agree with. Especially those people, because I surround myself with people who are like, you're amazing, I love you, all the time, right? It's easy for me to be around all of those people all the time. What about, it reminds me of the bubble of Hollywood, right? Like, or in the music business, like all the people who, they're like, you're beautiful, you're amazing. I'm like, yeah, it's true. Yes, awesome. But who's here telling me something different? Who's here in this comfort area, just outside my comfort zone, so that I'm growing as a human being? So that I'm not sat underneath here, like, oh my gosh, the bombs might drop on me, because that's what was ingrained in so much of our society, right? Like this. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Leslie, now the bombs might be dropped next week, so why don't you go sit underneath your desk, because that's going to protect you. So, Steve, I'm going to read this here. I remember when I moved to California at age 22, I was noticing the different people. I was spending too much time noticing. I finally realized that noticing was exhausting, not helpful. I had to unlearn what I had been taught. Yeah, all that. I remember when I was in when I met my husband, and okay, I hung out with like bikers. One of the guys that I dated was in a big, he'd grown up in one of like the most recognized motorcycle gangs in the country. And just, I dated a lot of people before I got married. And when I met my husband, he's British. And the first thing that I thought of was, wow, I don't know that my parents are going to like this guy, which was astounding to me. And again, it's this idea that how often are you meeting people and there's already this shutdown happening from family lineage, the shutdown of you're not supposed to be talking to that person. And then everything becomes hidden and suppressed and you're not supposed to, versus there's a different cultural outlook. And maybe I should get curious about where their points of view are coming from, so that we can expand as humanity. So the reason why I ended up getting married, again, like I dated a lot of like drug addicts, guys that went to prison, well, maybe it was more than one. Quite a few people who were just, who were living their life in very extreme ways. Let's put it that way. And that's gently. That's putting it really gently. And with that, what I was recognizing was my parents have never said one word about anybody else that I've ever brought to the door. And the first thing that my father says when I introduced him to my husband was, your grandfather would be rolling over in his grave, and how could you, of all of the people that you could date, how could you date him? And he was serious. And I had the same experience, not quite, it wasn't spoken when I went to England, but there was there was definitely a feeling of not quite welcome. And it took like quite a few years to get through that, but it was an intriguing from some of the family. Some of the family were like, I love you right away. And then other people were like, wow, okay, well, this will take a while. And so with this Irish and English piece, my dad's like almost 100% Irish. And so I'm thinking about even there, you know, even at a young age, I was taught you don't hang out with English people. It's a no-no. And of course, the first person that really like, I'm in this, wow, we could totally, not the first person, second person, that I was just really infatuated by was an Englishman. And so my question tonight really comes to this place of, who are the people that you're welcoming? You're just one person. Who is the one person that you're welcoming into your life that you can say is the complete opposite viewpoints, complete opposite in mannerisms? And then what are you doing to grow that for exploration in your life so that you don't just have yes people in your life? And how, you know, when we look at that, when we look into those deeper conversations, what are the areas in humanity that bring us into the 90%? Like, what are the common areas? And then what are those tiny little areas that we're off by 10%? I have this propensity to be extraordinarily grateful. And I don't know if that comes from a place of like early, when I was a child, the person really close to me died. And so I've just always dropped into this really deep place of how sacred humanity is. You know, sharing a bedroom with somebody and watching them take 2 years to die from cancer, and watching as the mask goes on at night just so that they can catch their breath, and 2 years of that, changing diapers, not sure if they're, you know, like, not sure if they're breathing that night. So I think that living that way from an early age gave me the insight to start questioning who I'm going to have in my life and who's going to tell me who I can talk to, who I can be seen with, how I can socialize, because none of that mattered. By the time that all of those things started to become important, 7th and 8th grade, maybe even 6th grade, those important things, I was like, man, if that's what you're grading humanity by, I'm out. I'm going to take like the rebellion road, and I'm going to talk to all the people that you tell me not to talk to. And I'm going to be seen with all the people that you're telling me not to be seen with. Because I'm interested in those deeper conversations, the things that challenge my points of view of, how the hell did you, are we even on the same planet? How did you end up over there? And I have this drive of curiosity, you know, it's not, I'm not in this place of, and I get it. I get that this is where people's safety comes into play. Deep safety, especially if it's ingrained, especially if like you're underneath and worried about bombs going off. There's true safety in that. People seeing people being killed in front of them, true safety in front of those conversations. This all comes up for me. I posted a little bit. This all comes up for me in conversations with everyone. Oh, how's everybody doing out there? Hello, I'm grateful to be here this evening. So this is where I I drop in on these conversations. It says, I wrote this out. I do my very best to understand what safety looks like for the opposer, for the person who opposes me. I try to get in and I try to understand what were the reasons, the key reasons that you created this environment for yourself under here. And then the second one was, what behaviors have influenced their feeling safe? So sometimes people just get into this place of, I feel safe because I'm creating this outlook on my life. I'm not willing to have these conversations. I don't have the capacity. I'm completely exhausted. If I talk to this person, then this other group of people who I really like aren't going to talk to me anymore. So there's so many little pieces to that of what behaviors have influenced your feeling safe. So over these next few weeks, one big area that I'm looking at is, how often am I coming underneath the desk? How often am I afraid that bombs are literally going off outside my house, or figuratively going off inside of my house, inside of this temple? It really stuck with me. My mother-in-law talks about, in England, they used to, when the war was going, they used to pull down the shades, and then they'd have to go hide underneath the kitchen table as the bombs were going off. So it's only one generation before here. And so many people have had high levels of violence, bombs, drugs, guns, whatever it is that get us into this, right? Thinking that this is going to protect us, this little piece of wood. And maybe every once in a while, maybe that was actually the case. But I don't know. I don't know that this is the answer, staying hidden. And I know it's uncomfortable. I get that. My back's kind of hurting right now. It's kind of uncomfortable. So I get it. And I really cherish safety. And I really love safety. And maybe there's only a few humans in the world who are meant to go out and have those bigger conversations and get in fights with people and really kind of bash it out, because it does quite a bit to the nervous system. Like I actually had to leave. I couldn't handle just being in the environment every day of having, maybe it's more of a dance. So there's this amount of safety that you have to have, and then just enough, possibly, of people who may or may not agree with all of the opinions that you're expressing. But how do you express your opinions, and how do you truly express who you are? And then feel seen and heard from the other side. Actual discourse. If you've not looked it up, I didn't know much about it, even though I was in school in California. I didn't know much about the trivium or the quadrivium when I was a young person. I studied it later. But our ability to have these conversations, to have conversations, not just today, but for future generations, that gets us out of sitting underneath the desk and waiting for the world to end. You know, it's just these tiny little steps of engagement. So that's all I had for the evening. I just wanted to drop in with you, well, because I adore you, but also just recognizing me sitting underneath the desk and creating more and more opportunities for people to genuinely show up in life, even through disagreements, and still be honored through the disagreement. Because I wouldn't have ended up getting married to the guy. I still have some major disagreements with the guy. Major disagreements. Major. I just consider that kind of like a spice in life, you know, like it's a little spicy in here sometimes. But I really, honestly, humbly cherish getting through those really challenging conversations and making them less challenging and less awkward the more that they are practiced. So I welcome your conversations this week. I actually have been working a whole bunch on putting together a bunch of classes and courses for people through the Spirituality Gone Wild site. And that's amazing. So I'd like to thank them. And I'm excited about teaming up all of the information that we're bringing to people. That's a blast. And then I also want to give a shout out to Steve Weber because we're going to be on his show tomorrow. Stephen and I will talking about the recording studio here. So that's it for the week. Wishing you so many blessings. Drop in with me and tell me where it is that you find the uncomfortable discussions. And then how can you welcome more vibrancy? And maybe you're like, I am just done with this year. I am definitely not having any more challenging conversations. I don't want to talk about anything anymore. So way to go you for your nervous system, for self-care the rest of this year. I get it. But at some point, how are we moving through and starting to lean in towards vulnerability to find one another and see one another and honor one another in this journey? Loads of love to all of you out there. Sending my very best. I'll see you on the other side.